Sangji was in her usual classroom mode, daydreaming about a boy instead of focusing on math equations. Naturally, her teacher caught on and snapped her back to reality. But Sangji, being Sangji, floated off into La La Land again within seconds. The math teacher, now running on fumes of patience, sentenced her to the ultimate punishment: bring your parents to school. The horror. At this point, her mom was practically a VIP at the school, making her second trip in 2 weeks, all thanks to Sangzi's antics. After class, a few boys sent an emissary to invite Sangzi to the bookstore. But nope, Sangzi turned them down flat. Her only plan? Texting her college-going brother, Sangyan, and begging for a rescue. Spoiler alert, Sangyan shut her down faster than a faulty vending machine. Defeated but not out of tricks, Sangji shuffled home, mumbling complaints like a storm cloud on legs. She was gearing up to drop the parent meeting bomb on her mom when her mother casually mentioned, "Oh, by the way, Sangyan's back." Sangzi practically sparkled with joy, grabbed a watermelon, because why not, and bolted upstairs to find him. There stood a guy who looked like he'd walked out of a skincare commercial. Smooth skin, chiseled features, the whole works. Sangzi's first thought? Sangyan got plastic surgery. Before her jaw could hit the floor, the real Sangyan appeared behind her, smirking. The mystery Adonis turned out to be Duan Jiaxu, Sangyan's roommate, who greeted Sangzi with the kind of charm that could disarm a debate champion. But once Sangyan figured out that Sangzi had mistaken Duan Jiaxu for his post-surgery self, he was ready to launch a sibling roast session. Cue the squabble of the year. Sangzi wasn't about to back down though. She tried pleading, bargaining. She called their mom, all crocodile tears, dramatically pointing at Sangyan. For added flair, she used Duan Jiaxu as a human shield. Their mom, of course, fell for it and dragged Sangyan off for a scolding, leaving Sangzi to turn off the tears like a faucet. Duan Jiaxu watched the whole scene unfold, thoroughly entertained. If he thought life with Sangyan would be boring, he was definitely rethinking that now. With Sangyan refusing to help, Sangzi quickly shifted her strategy, pleading with Duan Jiaxu to pose as her older brother and deal with the teacher. But he explained he had a part-time job and couldn't stick around for long. Refusing to give up, Sangzi begged harder, even pulling out her tearful performance again. Duan Jiaxu, amused but surprised to learn she was only in the 8th grade, remarked on how small she seemed for her age. Curious, he asked which school she attended, but his abrupt departure left her standing there, baffled and annoyed that he didn't explain what he was planning. Fast forward to the present. Sangzi is a sophomore in high school, but some things haven't changed, like her knack for fighting and ignoring Sangyan. Today, Sangyan made a grand declaration. He needed their dad's car to move his things back to the main campus, conveniently located near Sangzi's school. When Sangzi found out he was also moving his roommate's stuff, she pounced on the opportunity to volunteer. Her eager, innocent expression, paired with some subtle parental pressure, left Sangyan no choice but to agree. Defeated, he dragged her along. That afternoon, Sangji spotted their dad's car downstairs, and then he appeared, Duan Jiaxu. He immediately recognized her, though he was genuinely surprised at how much she had grown. Blushing furiously, at the dorm, Sangyan's roommates lit up like Christmas trees when they saw Sangzi. After all, she was undeniably cute, but Sangyan, ever the overprotective brother, promptly shooed them away. Duan Jiaxu, meanwhile, invited Sangzi to sit next to him. When he called her little sister, Sangji protested, claiming she wasn't little anymore. The group decided to go for hot pot later, but Duan Jiaxu had to head to work. Before leaving, he noticed her fox doll and casually told her she could keep it if she liked. Sangzi, curious as ever, cautiously asked if it was a gift from his girlfriend. Luckily, Qianfei jumped in with the perfect response. Duan Jiaxu? A girlfriend? Please. He's too busy working like a dog to have time for that. Apparently, the doll was just a prize from some event. Sangji gleefully smuggled the fox doll home in her backpack, along with one of Duan Jiaxu's books she didn't understand a word of. Frustrated but determined, she left her homework book at his place on purpose, setting up her next move. That evening, she borrowed Sangyan's phone to call Duan Jiaxu, arranging to meet at the bus stop at 6:40 the next morning so he could help her with her essay. By 6 o'clock, she was up and ready, anxiously waiting at the bus stop. Would he actually show up? It felt just like that day in 8th grade, when she had spent an entire class period wondering if Duan Jiaxu would keep his promise. That day, Sangzi sat at her desk after school, sulking and waiting for Duan Jiaxu. When he finally walked in, effortlessly cool as always, she tried to guilt him. "You're late," she pouted, arms crossed. Completely unaware he was on trial for tardiness, Duan Jiaxu apologized lightly. Now, at the bus stop, her phone rang. She answered sharply, "You're late again. I hope you never find a girlfriend." But before she could hang up, a milk bottle appeared in front of her. She froze. There he was, grinning, and not late at all. At a breakfast shop, they settled in to do homework. Duan Jiaxu casually handed her a small cake, earning a surprised glance. As they worked, Sengji's mind drifted to an 8th grade memory when he had stepped in to play the role of her brother, Sang Yan, at the teacher's office. The teacher had been on a roll, listing complaints about Sangji's attitude toward learning, even though she was the top student. Duan Jiaxu, pretending to be Sang Yan, listened politely but barely reacted, nodding like he had mastered the art of pretending to care. Nudging Sangji to apologize, he charmed the teacher into forgiving her. The memory left Sangji torn between gratitude and amazement at his effortless smoothness. Back in the present, Sangji asked Duan Jiaxu about his vacation plans. True to form, he dodged the question with a smirk, telling her to focus on her homework. Typical. Earlier that morning, Duan Jiaxu had left a note in her backpack after sneakily reading her essay, where she humorously compared Sang Yan to a stray dog. When she found the note later, her cheeks burned in embarrassment. Meanwhile, her persistent admirer Fu Jiaxu had invited her to his birthday party, but Sangji brushed him off, uninterested. Finally, she read the note Duan Jiaxu had left behind. It was a playful essay titled "Helping My Brother Move" that ended with, "If I meet little Sangji again, I'll be very happy." Her heart raced as she hugged the note to her chest, quickly adding him on WeChat. He accepted instantly. When her mom found the milk later, she worried over Sangji's allergies. That weekend, Sang Yan was assigned to babysit her while their parents attended a wedding. He dragged her to dinner, mentioning a roommate would join them. Excited, Sangji dressed up. But her enthusiasm faded when the roommate turned out to be Qianfei. Her spirits rose again when they picked up Duan Jiaxu, who teased her for not calling him. Sangji flushed at his easygoing question. "Why do you blush every time you see me?" At the restaurant, Sang Yan entrusted her to Duan Jiaxu while he caught up with Qianfei. Flustered, Sangji excused herself to the restroom, where she noticed a blood stain on her skirt. Panicking, she returned to find Duan Jiaxu, who quietly pointed it out and offered to help. Too shy to handle it himself, he enlisted Sang Yan to buy pads, and the pads discreetly delivered to Sangji. When she returned to the table, Sangji was relieved to find only Sang Yan waiting. Duan Jiaxu soon handed her warm water with quiet thoughtfulness, which made her heart flutter again. Her brother, ever the protector, ensured she avoided allergenic foods. Meanwhile, Duan Jiaxu subtly removed unsafe items from her plate, leaving her with the safe options. Embarrassed but touched by the care, she kept quiet, resigning herself to her allergen-free meal. After dinner, Qianfei insisted on dragging the group to the claw machines. Sangji feigned disinterest, arms crossed, until Duan Jiaxu casually said, "Brother will help you catch one." Her heart skipped a beat, and true to his word, he snagged a doll on the first try. Handing it over with a cheeky smile, she clutched the doll, her cheeks warm, the moment pulling her back to 8th grade. Back then, he had walked her home after rescuing her from the teacher's lecture, even bringing a light bulb for her dad. Years had passed, but his teasing grin and her flustered reactions remained the same. Later, Zhenru pulled Sangji along to meet Fu Jiaxu, but instead led them to the cafe where Duan Jiaxu worked. While ordering, Sangji couldn't help sneaking glances at him. Duan Jiaxu, sharp as ever, caught her in the act and joked, "That's 1 yuan for stealing looks," before treating her to dessert. Her amusement faded when she overheard him asking about an advance on his salary. The idea of him working out of necessity left her uneasy. When Fu Jiaxu arrived, he greeted Duan Jiaxu with a loud "brother" before cluelessly blurting, "Why's your brother working here? Sangji's family is loaded." Sangji's embarrassment burned brighter than a neon sign. Later, unable to shake her concern, she returned to the cafe to leave extra money for him. Duan Jiaxu found the cash later and sighed at her persistence. At Fu Jiaxu's birthday party, Sangji wanted to leave early, but Fu Jiaxu stuck to her side like glue, launching into a speech about his crush. Before he could name names, Duan Jiaxu appeared, cutting him off mid-confession. As they talked, Duan Jiaxu handed her the money she'd left, insisting it was for the dessert, even as she protested. Meanwhile, Zhenru's mood toward Sangji shifted, her cold shoulder becoming impossible to ignore. Sangji barely had time to dwell on it before her homeroom teacher volunteered her for the school sports meet. On the big day, Zhenru was loudly cheering, for Fu Jiaxu of course, while pointedly ignoring Sangji. Coincidentally, The event recorders turned out to be none other than Sang Yan and Duan Jiaxu. While Sang Yan wasted no time mocking her height, Duan Jiaxu complimented her shirt and wished her luck, his easy kindness leaving her smiling. Later, he shielded her from the sun with a hat and subtly stood between her and Sang Yan's relentless teasing. When it was her turn to compete, nerves got the better of Sangzi. After a few failed attempts at the bar, she ended up injured. Sang Yan, muttering complaints but clearly concerned, carried her to the infirmary. On the way, a few people curiously asked if Duan Jiaxu was her brother. In a panic, Sangji blurted out, "He's my dad." The silence that followed was deafening. At the infirmary, Duan Jiaxu carefully disinfected Sangji's wound, his touch gentle and his calm demeanor reassuring. The warmth in his actions left her comparing him to Sang Yan, who had sprinted to help her, but complained the whole way. Just as she was basking in his attention, her mood soured when she spotted him treating another girl with the same kindness. A flicker of jealousy sparked, leaving her sulking quietly, the doll he won for her still clutched tightly in her arms. After school, Zhenru unexpectedly dragged Sangzi along to buy something. Meanwhile, Duan Jiaxu was waiting at the school gate, only to be told the school was already empty. Zhenru wanted to go to an internet cafe. Sangzi hesitated, but when Zhenru went in alone, she reluctantly followed. The real shock came inside. Zhenru was being extorted by older girls and had lured Sangji there as part of her plan. The bullies rifled through Sangji's bag, threatened her, and demanded money. Furious and betrayed, Sangji glared at Zhenru, who looked too ashamed to meet her eyes. Sangji told her to confess to her parents and limped away, ending their so-called friendship on the spot. As she walked through the alley, she ran into Duan Jiaxu, who had been searching for her. Overwhelmed, she leaned on his shoulder and cried. Alarmed, he bought her juice and asked if she'd been bullied. Sangji initially tried to downplay it, but when she saw the anger in his eyes, she spilled everything. Duan Jiaxu told her firmly to cut ties with Zhenru and to involve her parents if it happened again. Riding home on the back of his bicycle, Sangji started to relax. When they arrived, Duan Jiaxu handed her the money the bullies had taken and reminded her to tell her parents. As she sat in her room later, she couldn't ignore her feelings anymore. She wrote them down, folded the paper into a star, and tucked it into a wishing bottle, a secret confession of her crush on Duan Jiaxu. The next day, Sang Yan and Duan Jiaxu, backed by their roommates, showed up at Sangji's school to confront the bullies. They didn't expect the tormentors to be girls, but Sang Yan didn't care. Together, they tracked down the older girls, retrieved the stolen money, and delivered some very firm warnings to leave Sangzi alone. Afterward, Sangji, casually holding a lollipop, handed Duan Jiaxu 20 yuan to repay him. He chuckled and took it after refusing a little. Qianfei remarked that Sangji was like Duan Jiaxu's little sister. The next day, Zhenru she transferred to another school, leaving an apology note on Sangzi's desk. Sangzi barely glanced at it before tucking it away. When the exam results came in, Sangzi aced nearly everything, except physics, her eternal nemesis. Barely passing, she earned both her parents' praise and concern. Their solution? A winter course. Sangzi was fine with the plan, until she learned her tutor would be Sang Yan. The study sessions turned into a war zone, filled with endless bickering and sarcastic jabs. Both siblings quickly called it quits, begging their parents for a new tutor. Their mum soon announced she'd found someone else, but Sangzi, fueled by dread, wasn't sticking around to find out who. The night before the first session, she hatched an escape plan. Before dawn, she snuck out like a stealthy ninja, determined to dodge whatever horrors the new tutor had in store. Sangzi's escape plan fell apart the second she walked into the kitchen and spotted Duan Jiaxu casually slurping instant noodles as if he'd lived there his whole life. Before she could even process the sight, Sang Yan dropped the news like it was no big deal. "Oh yeah, Duan Jiaxu is your new tutor." Stunned, Sangji froze at the dining table, torn between excitement and the urge to flee. But the sight of those noodles, perfectly topped with a fried egg, worked wonders to calm her nerves. Maybe tutoring wouldn't be so bad after all. Feeling a spark of determination, she grabbed her books and made her way to Sang Yan's room. There, the brothers were glued to a video game, oblivious to her arrival. Sangzi seized the opportunity to stealthily snap a photo of Duan Jiaxu. When he caught her red-handed, she quickly played it cool, brushing it off like it was nothing. Later, she renamed Duan Jiaxu in her contacts as Brother Jiaxu, a gesture he countered with a surprise, watermelon, and a physics book. As he handed them over, he casually asked to see the photo she took. Sangji expertly dodged the request, steering the conversation back to studying, where Duan Jiaxu quickly proved to be a surprisingly effective teacher. During one session, Sangji's curiosity got the better of her, and she asked why he chose to attend Nangu University. Duan Jiaxu's response about wanting to work in the gaming industry caught her off guard. Dreamy and ambitious, just like she'd secretly imagined. Another time, noticing he looked tired, she let him nap before their session, carefully draping a coat over him to make physics more engaging. Duan Jiaxu later took her to the Science and Technology Museum, where the exhibits left her awestruck. Seizing the moment, he shared heartfelt advice about chasing her passions, a gesture that brightened her mood and bolstered her confidence. Duan Jiaxu had always encouraged Sangji's love for drawing. During one of their casual chats, she blurted out, "Can you not date anyone?" Startled, he looked at her and asked why. Flustered, she muttered something vague about relationships being distracting, then hesitated before asking, "Would you still treat me the same if you had a girlfriend?" Duan Jiaxu's answer was kind but not entirely comforting. "If I get a girlfriend, she'll be kind to you too," he said. That evening, her calm shattered when she realized her sketchbook was missing, left behind at the Science and Technology Museum. Panic set in when she called and learned it had already been picked up. It was Duan Jiaxu came through the line. She felt a wave of dread as she remembered the portrait she'd drawn of him tucked among the pages. The next day, Duan Jiaxu returned the sketchbook. Sangji accepted it with shaky hands, convinced he had seen the drawing. Her mind spiraled with scenarios of him flipping through the pages and laughing. To make matters worse, Sangyan, ever the nosy sibling, noticed her flustered state immediately. With a dramatic roll of his eyes, he stormed back to the dorm and grumbled to Duan Jiaxu about her obvious crush. Duan Jiaxu, however, took it in stride. Laughing, he brushed off Sangyan's irritation. "It's normal for someone her age to have feelings like that," he said lightly, leaving Sangyan to fume on his own. Mortified, but determined to recover, Sangji hatched an elaborate plan. She claimed to be in an online relationship, even going as far as staging a dramatic heartbreak during their tutoring session. Her overly tragic performance left Duan Jiaxu thoroughly convinced. Gently, he advised her it wasn't the right time for relationships, and though she felt a flicker of relief, the whole act left her more embarrassed than ever. Thanks to Duan Jiaxu's tutoring, Sangji's grades took a noticeable turn for the better. But her victorious streak came to a halt when Duan Jiaxu announced that he couldn't continue their sessions. The disappointment on her face was hard to miss, but his promise to reward her for reaching milestones lit a small spark of motivation. As their lessons came to an end, Sangji's parents invited Duan Jiaxu to join them for Chinese New Year's Eve. He politely declined, citing school commitments, but Sangji wasn't about to let him leave empty-handed. With her own flair for subtlety, she slipped a red envelope with a star-shaped note into his coat pocket, determined to leave a small mark of gratitude. On New Year's Eve, Sangji and Sangyan collected their red envelopes from their parents, an annual tradition that brought predictable drama. Sangji beamed at her father's gift of a new phone, while Sangyan grumbled about his noticeably thinner envelope, prompting Sangji to gleefully confiscate it as compensation for his whining. That same evening, Duan Jiaxu sent Sangji a simple New Year's greeting, a message that felt oddly personal amid the generic holiday cheer. But his night turned grim when he received an urgent call about his father's surgery, forcing him to rush back to Yihe. After the break, Duan Jiaxu kept his word and sent Sangji a small reward for her academic progress. Only later did she learn that he had spent the holiday in Yihe, grappling with his father's health crisis. As much as Sangji looked forward to seeing him again, Sangyan casually announced, "He's busy making money," stirring her curiosity and a faint sense of disappointment. Still, her spirits lifted slightly when she learned that none of Sangyan's roommates were dating, a revelation she filed away as a quiet relief. Soon after, Duan Jiaxu received a package. A black dog toy. Sangji was thrilled when she heard, immediately wanting to send another gift in return. But Duan Jiaxu suggested she wait until his and Sangyan's graduation ceremony, a promise that filled her with excitement. She threw herself into planning for the day, determined to make it special. Meanwhile, a girl approached Duan Jiaxu with money and concern over how hard he was working. His distant but polite response left no room for misinterpretation. He wasn't interested. On graduation day, Sangji arrived with her father and immediately spotted Duan Jiaxu in his gown. Her eyes lit up, and before she could overthink, she rushed over to hand him the flowers she had carefully chosen. The hidden gift tucked behind her back stayed exactly there. She couldn't find the right moment to give it, and her nerves only grew as the day went on. As Duan Jiaxu said goodbye to classmates, the bittersweet finality of graduation was hard to miss. Watching him, Sangji couldn't help but worry. Would she still get to see him after this? Sensing her unease, Duan Jiaxu smiled softly and reassured her, "I'm different from them. Whenever I have time, I'll come back to see you." Later, he called over a classmate to snap a photo of the two of them, introducing Sangji as his sister. That evening, while others celebrated loudly, Duan Jiaxu seemed quieter, the weight of his impending return to Yihe heavy on his mind. Even Sang Yan, normally all bluster and jokes, seemed subdued at the thought of parting with his roommate. When the gathering wrapped up, Duan Jiaxu planned to escort a tipsy Sang Yan home and head to a hotel, but Sangji's mother was having none of it, firmly insisting he stay the night in Sang Yan's room. Sangji, seizing the opportunity, quickly led him upstairs, her heart racing faster than her steps. Once there, she hurried to prepare toiletries for him, her excitement and nerves bubbling under the surface. Sangji carefully arranged toiletries for Duan Jiaxu with the precision of someone preparing a hotel suite. Relieved he hadn't been drinking and wouldn't need any hangover remedies. Feeling satisfied with her hospitality skills, she went to bed, but in the middle of the night, she woke up to find him still awake. Curious, she wandered over and asked, "Why aren't you sleeping?" Duan Jiaxu hesitated before admitting, "I'm not used to the bed." Sangji raised an eyebrow, clearly sensing that wasn't the whole story. After some encouragement, he opened up about his worries, his father's health, debts, and the weight of countless responsibilities. Alarmed, Sangji immediately offered her savings, as if she were a tiny financial superhero. Duan Jiaxu reassured her with a small smile that it wasn't just about money. Feeling helpless, Sangji scribbled a secret resolution in her notebook: save enough money to help Duan Jiaxu someday. Before dawn, Duan Jiaxu attempted to leave quietly, but Sangji spotted him from the balcony, her night owl instincts kicking in. Their eyes met, and he gave her a small wave before disappearing into the morning. Shortly after, a message buzzed on her phone. Duan Jiaxu was catching an early flight back to Yihe and reminded her to focus on her exams. With school back in session, Sangji tackled her senior year with a new goal: to get into Yihe University, his city. Duan Jiaxu's gifts arrived with every academic milestone. Then came the bombshell. Sang Yan, on the phone with a friend, casually speculated about Duan Jiaxu having a girlfriend. Sangji's mood took a nosedive, and she impulsively went to Yihe and announced she was visiting Yihe to meet an online boyfriend. Furious, Sang Yan, caught between disbelief and panic, called Duan Jiaxu to come and handle the situation. When Duan Jiaxu arrived, he wasn't alone. Another girl was with him, and the sight was like a cold slap to Sangji's fragile hopes. Her emotions spiraled as Duan Jiaxu calmly scolded her for causing trouble. She spun a desperate tale of heartbreak, sobbing that her online boyfriend had rejected her for being too young. Duan Jiaxu, ever composed, comforted her gently, reminding her that she had time and would find someone better someday. Overwhelmed, Sangji grabbed his coat and ran off, tears streaming down her face as she found a quiet corner to cry harder. When she returned, the mysterious girl was gone, and Duan Jiaxu had already arranged her flight back. His efficiency was both comforting and infuriating. At his suggestion, they went for a meal, but Sangji barely touched her food, still lost in her emotional whirlwind. She fidgeted endlessly with her bag, debating whether to hand over the gift she had prepared. After countless false starts, she finally managed to give him the tie she had picked out, feeling both relieved and nervous. While Duan Jiaxu stepped away to take a call, she seized the opportunity to sneak the money for her plane ticket into his wallet. At the airport, Duan Jiaxu stayed by her side until boarding. In a quiet moment, Sangji pulled out the teddy bear he had given her years ago and handed it to him, saying, "I wish you happiness every day." The gesture was simple but heartfelt, and Duan Jiaxu accepted it with a warm smile. When Sangji arrived, Sang Yan was waiting at the airport. For once, he skipped the sarcastic remarks as she broke into uncontrollable sobs. Standing there awkwardly, he clearly had no idea how to comfort her, though the sight of his usually fiery little sister so heartbroken softened his expression. Back home, Sangji braced herself for a lecture, but her parents surprised her by acting as if nothing had happened. They simply urged her to sit and eat, their calmness making her wonder if this was parental wisdom, or just a refusal to dive into whatever chaos she had stirred up this time. After Sangji went upstairs, her parents dropped their facade and exchanged concerned looks, quietly analyzing her mood. Sang Yan assured them that Sangji had realized her mistake and begged them to let the matter rest. Agreeing to pretend nothing had happened, they decided to keep her ID card out of reach to prevent future mishaps. Meanwhile, Sangji quietly gathered everything connected to Duan Jiaxu and tucked it away in a box. Among the items was her collection of paper stars, a testament to her dream of attending Yihai University. Time passed, and Sangji achieved her goal of getting into Yihai University. Between the rigorous military training and a whirlwind of classes, her days were full. She found friendship in her new roommates, Ningwei, Yuxin, and Wang Wang. The four girls soon crossed paths with Wang Ming, a student from the Sports Institute. It was Ningwei's birthday, and they celebrated with unrestrained joy at a KTV. Meanwhile, Duan Jiaxu's colleagues arranged blind date for him. They introduced him to a charming girl named Jiaxu. Needing a break, she stepped outside for fresh air and unexpectedly stumbled upon Duan Jiaxu sitting on the stairs. Unluckily, she had accidentally brought a friend's cigarette with her, prompting Duan Jiaxu's immediate disapproval. He criticized her for smoking, though it was not hers. Their conversation quickly turned personal. Duan Jiaxu seemed irritated, teasingly calling her a bratty kid. He couldn't hide his frustration either. After all, he'd sent her countless messages without a single reply. He couldn't figure out what he'd done to upset her. She was more focused on making it clear that she wasn't a kid anymore. When Duan Jiaxu offered to drive her back, Sangji declined and returned to the private room to finish celebrating Ning Wei's birthday. As the night went on, Sangji told her friends she needed to leave before her mom inevitably called. Mentally, she was preparing herself, grappling with the realization that she was no longer a child. He was standing just outside and overheard her remark. He still insisted on driving her back to campus. The car ride was tense. Duan Jiaxu was eager to talk things out, puzzled by her cold behavior. Sangji, however, avoided his questions and firmly resisted being treated as a child. She was determined to prove she had grown up. Curiosity about Duan Jiaxu's life tugged at Sangji, though. She'd heard he was now working in the gaming industry. On the other hand, Duan Jiaxu assumed she had chosen Yihai University because of an old online friend. Sangji quickly dismissed the idea, explaining that she'd long since lost contact with them, a misunderstanding that had also angered her brother, Sang Yan. When they arrived at campus, Duan Jiaxu handed her a bottle of honey water, casually advising her to drink it to avoid a headache the next morning. For his part, Duan Jiaxu had been thrilled when he learned Sangji would be studying at Yihai University. His happiness only added to Sangji's bittersweet emotions. She found herself wondering more about him. Why was he here? And wasn't his home in Yihai? More importantly, did he have a girlfriend? Sangji usually ignored Duan Jiaxu's messages, but for some reason, she decided to reply today. The next morning, she was busy defending herself to Sang Yan, insisting she hadn't been drinking. Meanwhile, Jiang Ming also texted, offering to accompany her home if she ever stayed out late again. Despite the multiple messages, Sangji only chose to respond to Duan Jiaxu. Later, she shared a story with her roommates about a friend who had a crush on her brother's friend. She confided her confusion, wondering whether this friend had always seen her as just a little sister. However, they played along, keeping their observations to themselves. Sang Yan casually suggested that Sangji invite Duan Jiaxu out for a meal sometime, a gesture of goodwill that revealed how much he genuinely cared for her. And even when her exam results were good, reflecting on his kindness, Sangji began to question whether she had been unfair to him. After all, Duan Jiaxu had done nothing wrong. He had only ever been good to her. Meanwhile, at his company, Duan Jiaxu presented the Tianyan system during a meeting. Although his draft received praise for its innovation, the technical challenges posed significant risks, and the project wasn't approved for now. Still, Duan Jiaxu remained optimistic, encouraging his team to persevere. Determined to show her gratitude, Sangji decided to invite Duan Jiaxu for a meal. Crafting the message turned into an ordeal. She rewrote and deleted it repeatedly before finally sending it. When Duan Jiaxu received the text, he chuckled at her use of the formal wordings. He called her directly. Sangji quickly blamed Sang Yan, saying he insisted she show respect to people at least 5 years older than her, a rule that conveniently applied to Duan Jiaxu. As her week unfolded, Sangji's roommate Ning Wei quickly found a boyfriend, and the group was invited to a movie outing. Although Sangji wanted to decline, already having plans with Duan Jiaxu that weekend, her roommate's excitement left her no choice but to agree. Elsewhere, Duan Jiaxu received a package from Jiang Ying but immediately discarded it, along with her attempts to reconnect. At work, the Tianyan system was unexpectedly incorporated into a new plan. On the evening of their planned meal, Sang Zi arrived at the restaurant only to receive a message from Duan Jiaxu saying he couldn't make it. Concerned, she asked for his company's address and rushed over. When she found him, he looked pale and was struggling with stomach pain. Without hesitation, Sang Zi helped him to the roadside to hail a taxi, briefly ending up in his arms by accident. Awkwardness was set aside as they headed straight to the hospital. Duan Jiaxu was diagnosed with acute appendicitis and needed immediate surgery. Sang Zi nervously watched as he was taken into the operating room. While waiting outside, she called her mother to explain the situation. Her mother's response took Sang Zi by surprise. She remarked on Duan Jiaxu's tough life, mentioning that he had no family to rely on. Curious, Sang Zi pressed for more details. Her mother explained that when Duan Jiaxu's mother was gravely ill, their family had lent him money to cover expenses. Duan Jiaxu repaid the loan within 6 months, but tragically, his mother still passed away. After the surgery, Duan Jiaxu urged Sang Zi to return to school, insisting he was fine and that she didn't need to worry. On the way to the hospital earlier, Duan Jiaxu had absent-mindedly kissed her forehead, a gesture that lingered in his thoughts. Ultimately, Sang Zi decided to stay by his side, reasoning that if their roles were reversed, Duan Jiaxu wouldn't have left her alone. Settling in, Sang Zi grabbed some bread to ease her hunger, munching quietly as she sat near his bed. Later, as Duan Jiaxu remained bedridden, Sang Zi took it upon herself to care for him. She dampened a towel and wiped his face, trying her best to help him feel refreshed. Duan Jiaxu suddenly opened his eyes, catching Sang Zi off guard as their gazes met. Flustered, she quickly made up an excuse and hurried to the restroom to steady herself. That night, she set up a makeshift bed beside him and stayed there, despite his protests. At one point, she took out her phone and sent a message to her friends. When a voice message started playing aloud, she quickly scrambled to lower the volume. Though Duan Jiaxu appeared to be asleep, he suddenly spoke, asking her about the person who wanted to take her to a movie. Sang Zi, caught off guard, dismissed his question with a smirk, teasing that he wouldn't understand the youth culture even if she tried to explain it. The next morning, Sang Zi helped Duan Jiaxu freshen up before heading to her classes. Once in class, Sang Zi learned from her roommate that Jiang Ming had been asking about her all day. Feeling cornered, she sent him a polite message, explaining that a sick relative had kept her busy, but promised to join him for a movie when she had time. Meanwhile, Duan Jiaxu, unable to sit idle, asked his supervisor to send over a computer, only to be firmly told to rest. Sang Zi went to Duan Jiaxu's house to retrieve some necessities. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she took a moment to look around. To her surprise, she spotted a photo of herself with Duan Jiaxu on display. In a quiet moment, Sang Zi softly introduced herself to the image before gathering some clothes, including 2 pairs of his underwear. Just as Sang Zi was leaving, Jiang Ying arrived at Duan Jiaxu's house. Unaware that no one was home, she appeared distraught and lingered outside. Sang Zi returned to the hospital carrying bags of items for Duan Jiaxu. An elderly patient in the neighboring bed mistook her for Duan Jiaxu's wife, prompting a quick explanation from him that she was his sister. However, the old man's poor hearing led to further confusion. Duan Jiaxu played along to pacify the man, while Sang Zi, thoroughly indignant, loudly declared that Duan Jiaxu was old enough to be her father. Her outburst only deepened the misunderstanding, as the old man misunderstood her and cheerfully congratulated Duan Jiaxu on becoming a father. Furious and embarrassed, Sang Zi could only glare while Duan Jiaxu tried, and failed, to stifle his laughter. Duan Jiaxu worked through the night, leaving Sang Zi regretting her decision to let him use the computer. As his hospital discharge approached, the old man in the neighboring bed persisted with his advice, urging the two to get along and marry soon. Sang Zi walked Duan Jiaxu back to his house, though her mood remained somber. She couldn't shake the thought that Duan Jiaxu's casual teasing about their relationship stemmed from the belief that they could only ever be like siblings. Trying to move past her feelings, Sang Zi busied herself by leaving sticky notes around his home. Each one was a reminder about his diet, taking his medication, and avoiding late nights. She told him she wouldn't be able to visit often due to homework, but promised to treat him to a meal once he fully recovered. As she left, Sang Zi tried to reassure herself that this dynamic was fine. After all, she was just his little sister. Meanwhile, Duan Jiaxu carefully read her notes. Still worried that Sang Zi might be upset, Duan Jiaxu sought advice from Jiang Xiyun. Jiang Xiyun suggested he take Sang Zi out for a meal and have an honest conversation to clear the air. Meanwhile, Jiang Ying continued to call Duan Jiaxu, but he remained steadfast in cutting off all contact with her. Around the same time, Sangji reluctantly went to a movie with Jiang Ming. Unexpectedly, Jiang Ming turned out to be terrified of chickens, an unlikely phobia that left him thoroughly shaken by the film. Sangji's eyes lit up when she spotted a claw machine at the mall, sparking memories of Duan Jiaxu winning her a doll. Determined to replicate the glory, she fed coins into the machine like it was a slot machine jackpot. Nearby, Jiang Ming, clearly inspired by her intense focus, joined in at another machine. Against all odds, they both managed to grab small stuffed dogs at the same time, leaving Sangji wondering if she was some kind of claw machine prodigy. Back at school, Sangji's roommates invited her to the New Year's celebration at the central square. Jiang Ming enthusiastically agreed, while Tenzin, ever the practical one, waved them off with complaints about the cold and the crowds. But instead of joining the festivities, Sangji chose the quieter route, takeout and dorm solitude. Just as she was about to dig into her food, her phone buzzed. Duan Jiaxu was on the line, casually mentioning that his company was hosting a dinner where employees could bring family. He half-jokingly suggested bringing her along. Flustered, Sangji refused, reminding him she wasn't family. Duan Jiaxu shifted gears and promised to treat her to a meal instead. During dinner, Duan Jiaxu apologized for the awkwardness caused by the hospital incident. Sangji brushed it off like a pro, waving it away as no big deal. They chatted lightly, enjoying the meal. But the peaceful vibe didn't last long. Enter Jiang Ying, stage left, armed with a bottle of water and a grudge. She splashed Duan Jiaxu right in the face. Not one to back down, Sangji immediately retaliated, drenching Jiang Ying in return. Chaos ensued as Duan Jiaxu stepped between them, thoroughly soaked but still managing to maintain his composure. Jiang Ying, looking like a soggy cat, was dragged away by her friends. Sangji handed Duan Jiaxu a napkin to wipe his face and, unable to resist, asked, "Who was that?" Duan Jiaxu dismissed Jiang Ying as unimportant and gave a quick explanation about her connection to his father. Sangji, always quick to defend him, urged him not to let people push him around. As they stood there, snow began to fall, softening the moment. Sangji quietly made a wish for Duan Jiaxu's happiness, her thoughts swirling like snowflakes. Unaware, Duan Jiaxu followed suit, wishing for Sangji's continued happiness and health. The two of them, so wrapped up in their separate wishes, didn't realize how intertwined their hopes had become. Meanwhile, back at the dorms, Sangji's roommates were making their own New Year wishes. Wang Wang's suspiciously specific wish seemed to involve Jiang Ming, whose attention, of course, was firmly fixed on Sangji. Elsewhere, Duan Jiaxu found himself dealing with Jiang Ying again. She had shown up near his home, claiming she wanted to apologize, but quickly reverting to accusations and dramatic declarations. Sitting quietly at home later that night, Duan Jiaxu's gaze landed on the photo of him and Sangji. Outside, fireworks lit up the sky, marking the arrival of the new year. He snapped a picture of the display and sent it to Sangji. She replied with her own New Year's wishes, leaving him wondering, for a brief moment, whether to change her contact name to Gigi. He decided against it for now. Days later, Qianfei made a grand announcement about his engagement in their group chat, his enthusiasm spilling over into a late-night call with Duan Jiaxu. As Qianfei rambled on about his love life, Duan Jiaxu's mind wandered to Sangji and her ever-optimistic smile. Meanwhile, Sangji messaged Duan Jiaxu, letting him know she had something to give him and planned to visit his company. Around the same time, Jiang Ming suggested celebrating the end of exams with a trip to the bar, while Ningwei proposed dinner. Sangji declined, claiming she needed to deliver an electronic cat eye to a relative. At his office, Duan Jiaxu spotted her message but was delayed when Jiang Ying showed up again, creating a scene outside. Using his well-honed escape tactics, he left through another exit to meet Sangji. When he saw her, he pulled her aside, gently reminding her not to visit his workplace or home without informing him first. Sangji froze, momentarily misinterpreting his tone. Silently, she handed him the electronic cat eye and left, her mind spinning with self-doubt. Duan Jiaxu watched her retreating figure, conflicted but unsure how to bridge the distance forming between them. Over the years, Jiang Ying has been the human equivalent of that one tab you can't close no matter how hard you try, always popping up in Duan Jiaxu's life. His colleague told him they will strengthen their security to keep her out. Meanwhile, Sangji, blissfully unaware, keeps waiting for him to call. Eventually, Duan Jiaxu texts her with the same energy as someone asking when she will finish exam. Sangji, trying to keep it cool, replies with her flight info. Later, Duan Jiaxu pulls a move straight out of the romance with zero effort and suggested dinner after her exams. Sangji, channeling her inner queen of I'm busy, promptly shuts him down. Wang notices Sangji acting down. When asked about it, Sangji told her she is fine. The group eventually went to town for some much-needed fun, but Sangji stays in her own world while Jiangming croons a love song on stage. Outside, Jiangming steps in to help a clearly tipsy Sangji, who decides she's not about that damsel in distress life and pushes him away. Duan Jiaxu arrives just in time to play knight in shining armor, pulling her away. Sangji is equal parts annoyed and confused. Like, sir, you won't let her visit you, but you'll magically appear at a bar? The math isn't mathing. Duan Jiaxu listens. He carries her home piggyback style, all while she spills her feelings. The next morning, Sangji wakes up with a hangover and a strong urge to delete the entire previous night. Her roommates, however, are living for the tea, teasing her about the mysterious elder relative who, plot twist, turned out to be hot. Flustered, she vows to never drink again. Not because of her headache, but because she puked on Duan Jiaxu. Iconic. She tries avoiding him out of pure embarrassment, but Duan Jiaxu shows up at her school, gift in hand, ready to whisk her away. On the car ride to the airport, the tension is thicker. Sangji tries to explain her night like she's talking to a disappointed parent, completely missing the fact that Duan Jiaxu is spiraling into jealousyville. He's convinced the mystery crush she mentioned is Jiangming, which is hilariously off the mark. Duan Jiaxu is still convinced Sangji's mystery crush was breakfast delivery guy. Sangji, looking like a deer caught in the headlights, stammered out a denial that was about as convincing as a toddler claiming they didn't eat the last cookie. Desperate to deflect, she dropped a wild bomb. Her type was very manly, Duan Jiaxu, who leaned in and asked how a super manly guy could also be a kind sweetheart without seeming fake. Back home, Sangji was greeted with her parents showering her with love. Sang Yan, meanwhile, trudged behind, dragged her suitcases while complaining. When Sangji handed out New Year gifts, her parents got thoughtful presents, leaving them delighted. Sang Yan, however, received the ultimate sibling roast, a pair of absurdly asymmetrical sunglasses. He hated them, but grudgingly accepted them because, well, sibling dynamics. Dinner turned into the Sangji praise hour, as she casually updated her parents about Duan Jiaxu's post-appendicitis glow-up. This, of course, turned into a roast session for Sang Yan. Later, Sangji suggested Sang Yan should help Duan Jiaxu find a girlfriend. Sang Yan shut her down, grumbling that Duan Jiaxu could handle his love life without his interference. That night, Sangji opened her wardrobe to find a shrine of gifts from Duan Jiaxu, all neatly stored. The memory of his comment about younger girls hit her. She couldn't resist testing the waters, so she sent him a bait text about Sang Yan's younger girlfriend. Duan Jiaxu's reply asking if she was even legal. Sangji, somewhere between flustered and offended, confirmed she was, to which he replied that being legal and in college was acceptable. Duan Jiaxu, meanwhile, was totally spiraling internally. During Qianfei's business trip, he met up with Duan Jiaxu for dinner, and things got personal. Qianfei, ever the instigator, teased Duan Jiaxu about the mystery girl who seemed to have him in his feels lately. Duan Jiaxu dodged the topic, citing their age gap as a reason to keep things under wraps. But when Duan Jiaxu casually described the type of guy this girl supposedly liked, Qianfei suggested the guy sounds like Duan Jiaxu. Wait, could Sangji actually like him? On Qianfei's wedding day, Duan Jiaxu texted Sangji at an ungodly early hour, saying he was in Nanwu and wanted to meet up. At the reception, Duan Jiaxu couldn't resist trolling Sang Yan, introducing him as his brother, much to Sang Yan's visible horror. Meanwhile, Sangji sat quietly next to Duan Jiaxu. Sensing the vibe, Duan Jiaxu leaned in and started poking the bear, asking why she hadn't brought anyone with her and casually inquiring about the guy she liked. Sangji, now 50 shades of flustered, shifted uncomfortably. But then his teasing tone shifted, and she froze as Duan Jiaxu seemed to actually think about what he was saying. Was he piecing things together? Cue panic mode. When Sangji attempted to switch seats with Sang Yan to escape the awkward tension, both men shut her down. After the meal, Sang Yan invited the group to drinks, but Sangji had already hit her limit on cringe for the day and made an early exit. Of course, Duan Jiaxu wasn't about to let her off that easily, and insisted on driving her home. Along the way, he casually dropped her nickname, Gigi. He pulled out a New Year gift, a bracelet engraved with her name. As Sangji held the bracelet, she wondered if it was a romantic gesture or just another big brother move. She then started Googling the meaning of bracelet as a gift, and read it was to express love. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.